All right, hello everybody. This is Francesca with Cross Crow Books. Good to see everybody again. And I am here with the fantastic Christopher Allaun on this wonderful Devil's Night. We are recording this the day before Halloween, which is very appropriate. So we are here to talk a little bit about Chris's book. And I have in my hands here the hardcover edition of The Black Book of Johnathan Knotbristle. I don't know if you can see that, but there you go. And Chris, could you tell us a little bit about this fantastic book I'm holding in my hand?
Yes, I can. So the book itself is a slightly channeled, slightly inspired, slightly creative story about a young witch in 1870 whose family all dies because of disease, and the devil comes and grants him the powers of a witch. And then each of the chapters, each chapter teaches Johnathan about witchcraft, spells, and things like that. And of course, in the back of the book is Jonathan's actual black book, so his book of spells is in the back.
Yeah. Yay. And then that's the paperback you have in your hand there, right?
Yes. This is the paperback. Yeah, this is the paperback.
Beautiful. Awesome. So Chris, if you don't mind, can you just share a little bit about yourself, your magical background, kind of where you come from?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in a small town way outside of Houston, Texas. And in fact, Johnathan is actually from Texas. I never actually say that in the book, but he is. I wrote that, the idea that he was from Texas. And my background, I've been studying magic and paganism and witchcraft since about 1992, so over 30 years now, which is strange to say. I am an ordained minister with the Fellowship of the Phoenix, which is a queer spiritual pagan group. And I've been writing since about 2016, and I've recently just got my degree. I got a master's in divinity because I work a lot in a clinical setting with like patients and spiritual counseling, pastoral counseling. So spirituality and religion and energy has always been a part of who I am. And it's interesting because even though, of course, Johnathan grew up 100 years before I was even born, the book is it's a kind of like a witchy love letter to Southern witchcraft. So, you'll see a lot of my own personal style in Johnathan. You'll see, inspirations of who I am and things like that. So, if you want to know what style of witchcraft I do, it's all in here because I was an issue. I've been doing traditional witchcraft for over 20 years, and this is all. I don't want to say traditional. This is the kind of witchcraft that. If you walk into the forest and you met the devil, that's the kind of witchcraft this is. Whatever that means, inspired, channeled, ecstatic, folklore, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. So on that same kind of note, I always like to ask people this. What does being a witch mean to you?
What does it mean to me?
Yeah, it's a fun question.
It's interesting because when I was a kid, I always felt the presence of spirits. I've always felt the presence of ghosts and the dead. And my mother always had psychic dreams. It always came true. And for me, it's a connection with the with the spirits, the dead, energies of the earth, the stars. Um, I was actually thinking about that today, actually,
Huh.
about how to me witchcraft, yes, it is about casting a spell and lighting the candles and saying the chant, but it's also about going into that dark of night and just really sharing your energies with the spirits, and
Mhm.
whatever that means. It can be the earth spirits, or it can be the dead, or it can be
Mhm.
fairies, whatever that is. So it's just about really trying to connect with
You're
those
right.
spirits, which is to me.
Nice. And then just to kind of follow up on that, how did you personally become a witch? If you don't mind telling us a little bit about that.
You know, I, I, I hate to say it, but I was kind of born that way.
Mhm.
You know, um, I, like I said, I've always felt the spirits. I've always um, just had that connection. I think as a child, I didn't know what it was called
Mhm.
because I was always, looking for ghosts and playing in the dark
Yeah.
and attracted to cemeteries. And I think we all were the kid who picked acorns and put them in the bowl and made our witchy potions.
Mhm.
And when I was 17 years old, I did find an article about witchcraft, and it talked
Mhm.
about it being a nature religion, and it talked about spells, and it talked about the stars and energy. And I really thought that was cool. So
Mhm.
I went and like, oh, I'm gonna find a book. And you have to remember, this was 1992 in Houston, Texas. So the only
Yeah.
thing I had was Raymond Buckland's uh, complete book of witchcraft.
Oh,
Craft. And I
yep.
remember thinking, oh, the spells are cool. I hate everything else, but I like the spells. Well, focus at the time I'm 17, and it talked about this is how you make your own a robe, and this is how you read the tarot, and this is how you call the four elements. I'm thinking, I don't
Mhm.
care about any of that. Where's the spells?
Yeah.
I mean, I care about those things now, but when you're a teenager, you don't care about that.
Oh, no. When I was a teenager, I was going on like everythingunderthemoon.com and like looking up like love spells and stuff. I wasn't like studying the craft yet.
Right, right. And I think like one thing led to another. I think that which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Which
I
came
think I
first.
already had that inclination of the spirits and that connection to the energy, and so I gravitated towards the spells. Because
Mhm.
then, I was like, oh, I want to go deeper. I want to learn more, and so I taught myself until I was about 25. And when I turned 25 is when I found my very first spiritual teacher, Matthew Ellen
Mhm.
Wood. And then, because he was already a high priest and ordained, and so I went through training with him, and then we founded the fellowship, and blah 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 blah. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, it was almost like once I became trained, it was like a domino effect.
Yeah.
But it was a long, well, I thought it was a long time. It was like 7 years between when I first practiced until I found a teacher. And
Mhm.
part of it is you have to remember at the time we didn't have websites, we didn't have
Right.
things like that. And if you lived, I went from a small town to a college town, and I remember this college town. I forget what it's called. Across the street from the university
Mhm.
was a witchcraft store.
Hmm.
And you walked in, and the first room was all like African drums, and then you saw the candles, and then the books. And it's interesting because it always smelled like Nog Champa incense.
Yeah.
So I associated that with witchcraft and magic. And so to this day, when people are like, I hate that. I hate that smell of not chomp. I'm like, no, it's witchcraft to me because I
Yeah.
associate that with my first occult store and things
Mhm.
like that, you know. So, yeah, it's interesting how you have these associations and
Oh
people
yeah.
have the opposite, you know.
Oh, totally. I 100% associate Nag Champa with my witchy aunt who you took me to my
Yeah,
first craft stores. There's just something about that smell that is just so quintessentially the craft.
I think so. I think so.
So back to the book a little bit.
Yeah,
So we've kind of touched on this a little bit. What was your inspiration for writing the book?
yeah. Because Blake told me to.
We all
Literally.
we all do what Blake tells us to.
It's funny because and I actually like this story a lot because
Mhm,
you know, I'm at you guys, it's been a while now.
mhm,
And I you know, I've really loved the store in Mallet Way, and you guys are always fun and charming, and you know, you come to my house for certain rituals
mhm.
and spells and things like that. And so, when Blake goes, "Oh yeah, I've started a publishing house," I was like, "Cool, great." And at the
Yeah.
time, I was smack dab in the center of a graduate program,
Mhm.
so, which means I was reading about between 5 and 10 books a week very quickly. I taught myself how to read very, very fast. Um, and so Blake was like, "Oh, you have to write a book for us." And I was like, "I don't have time." He's like, "No, you have to." I'm like, "I don't have time." He's like, "No, you have to." I'm like, "Ah, okay." And so that's how it worked out. And so then I said, "Hey, I'm in the summer. I'm only taking a couple classes, but I won't have time to do a lot of research." And when you write a book on witchcraft or whatever, you have to do a lot of research. I mean, how I do it is I know what I want to talk about, but then I
Mhm.
find sources that mm, um, um, basically prove what I'm already saying, you know.
Mhm.
And so I said, I don't have time to do all that, but maybe I can conjure some spirits and talk to the ancestors because I've worked a lot with the witch ancestors.
Mhm.
And one of the spirits, and I swear to God, this is what and I have a vessel that I use as a portal for the witch ancestors to manifest. I mean, I call them, but I have
Mhm.
something very specific.
Yeah.
And I conjured them and I said, okay, tell me your story.
Mhm.
And I'm in a trance. And Johnathan isn't his real name. I changed it, but Johnathan comes through. And I just saw this old witch in a rocking chair, smoking a pipe, drinking whiskey. And he goes, I got a story to tell you. I'm like, cool. And some of it I switched around, and some of it you know, I prettied up so it's a
Mhm.
story. But he came through, and you know, it's kind of like the spirit of Johnathan and I are telling story together.
Mhm.
It's mostly his story, but I think of it as what do you call it? A ghostwriter, literally,
Literally. Well, and
literally.
when I'm reading through the book too, I could really get the sense of there were two people speaking.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very, very obvious. There was two presences in the book.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely. I'm in there, and then Johnathan. You know, when I wrote it, you know, I wrote it. How many pages is it? It's like 240 pages or something.
Yeah.
And when I wrote it, I would just go into trance, and it just came through. I never. A lot of storytellers, you know, well, when they write, they say, "Oh, I didn't like that. Let me change it.
Yeah.
Let me edit this." I didn't edit a thing. I
Mhm.
edited nothing. So that's why when I gave it to your editor, I was like, "Oh, okay. I hope it's good because
Just like God bless,
proofread it."
have fun with it. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. I proofread read it, so it made sense, and
Yeah,
it was just authentically his story that came through. I didn't change anything. I
that's
changed,
great.
yeah.
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
and it was a lot of fun to do. One
Hmm.
of the things that I've learned, I work a lot with the Lakota,
Hmm.
and and my teachers would teach us through storytelling, and they would say, "Oh, I'm going to teach you a sacred healing song.
Hmm.
Let me tell you the story behind it," or a myth or a legend, or just how I came about the song, or how my teacher taught me. And they teach you through story. And
Yeah.
when they're teaching like this, you see it in your head, you
Hmm.
visualize it. So when you sing the song, it has a connection. And so I kind of thought, you know what, let's have Johnathan tell his story,
Yeah.
so people have a connection to that type of witchcraft.
Yeah. No, I love that. So we talked a little bit about going back to the story with like Uncle Bucky's Big Blue Book and everything.
Yeah.
One of the things I also love to ask people, both for inspiration for the book and just in general, were there any authors that have inspired your writing in the past, or
Oh
are there
yeah.
like practitioners, that you look up to, that you reference quite a bit?
So it's funny because I have a video blog and a podcast called the Mystic Chat, and sometimes I have authors, and I'm the biggest fanboy in the world. I just, like, scream about them. I get all excited and just like there's some authors I'm actually friends with, like Christopher Penzak. I love
Yeah.
him. I think he's fabulous. I think he's a good teacher and priest.
Hmm.
Like he's one of those people I want to emulate. I just think he's
Yeah.
great. Um, let's see. Uh, and I love um, Jim McGarry, Nigel Pennick,
Hmm.
um, Michael Howard. I love a lot. Doreen Valiente,
Yeah.
um, um, Evan John Jones. This is old stuff now. Evan
Yeah.
John Jones, like all the Cochrane stuff. Um, who I really adore
Hmm.
he is a Storm Fairy.
Oh, Storm Fairy Wolf. Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, he was on my show and I was like screaming like a 5-year-old girl. And and another author who who writes fiction right now is do you know Timothy Broderick?
Yeah, I do actually.
He was one of the very first famous authors, I guess, to talk about shape shifting and the dark moon and dark magic
Hmm.
and things like that. He had a book called The Dark Moon Mysteries,
Dark Moon
and
Mystery. That's where I know it from.
I
Hmm.
love that book. Like I thought at the time, God, I think that came out, I want to say like 1997 or 98 or something like that. And I just thought it was so innovative at the time. Like at the
Yeah.
time,
Hmm.
because at the time they were writing things like, oh, Reiki healing, which is great,
Yeah.
and stones and herbs and things. But he was like, okay, go to the dark of the moon, find the cemetery and the black candle. I'm like, I'm listening.
Yep.
I'm
Like
like,
that's the good shit.
tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying. Oh, and yeah, Nigel Jackson, I used to love a lot.
Hmm.
It's strange because he actually transitioned from traditional witchcraft to, like, I think he calls it agnostic Christianity,
Okay.
which is fine because
Yeah.
agnostic Christianity is like Christian witchcraft.
Right.
Um, which I can talk a whole other show about that. But anyway, um, who else? I have tons and tons of people. Yeah.
Yeah. I so what do you think, like, on your journey to being the witch that you are today, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles that you've had to kind of like get over? And like what kind of advice would you give people who might be facing similar hurdles?
I would say the very first thing to which it blew my mind and increased my magic a lot is just because you imagine it doesn't mean it isn't real. So if you visualize a spirit or a goddess, it's real, you know. And trust your spells. Trust your spells. Trust your spells. I think as a kid, I was like, oh, did it work? Did it work? What happened? Did it work? And just trusted it. It works on its own timeline. I've casted a spell that did not manifest for a year.
Yeah. Yep.
However, it was obvious the spell because the things I said in the chant, like, actually were repeated to me. And I was like, that was a year ago. Okay, I thought it failed and it didn't. It just was waiting for the right time. So yeah, I think those two. Well, the third thing is learn, take classes, take the workshops, read the books, practice. You can't, you always have to be a student. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and I consider myself a student still. I do. You know, I teach, but I'm a student. So, so those things.
It's funny. I was just thinking about this. Somebody said the other day that paganism and witchcraft. Now, granted, I don't personally think witchcraft is a religion, but that's just my personal opinion. But the thing was, paganism and witchcraft are the religions with homework. And I'm like, yes, that's very accurate. Just study, learn.
You know, it's sad that I think like all religions should have homework because. Like, how many times do we see Christians who don't know a thing about the Bible? So it should have homework. But yes, it's true. Well, lots of stuff to do, and you know what it is? It's a hands-on approach. I agree. Well, witchcraft is a craft, but it bleeds into a spiritual philosophy. Right. Like, you have to believe in energy, the universe, and spirits to actually do anything, but it isn't a religion per se.
I always say that they're like kissing cousins. That's like they're not quite the same, but there's a lot of intermingling going on.
Exactly. But yeah, you have to connect, you have to practice, you know.
So going back to the book, in the book we meet obviously the devil, we meet Frau Hulda. For practitioners who are reading the book, who are just starting out and maybe aren't as familiar with like working with Frau Hulda or with the devil, or what are some things you might suggest to them for like working with these kind of entities?
I would say the first thing is to get over your judgments about the devil and about Frau Hulda. The other thing is you have to remember, in traditional craft or folkloric craft is regional. So wherever you are, and from whatever stories that were told, that's what the gods are. So, for example, and in my tradition, for Hulda and Hela, kind of blended together. And so, when you say for Hulda, she looks like Hela. So the beautiful goddess on this side and the crone of death on the other, that's clearly Hela. But they're like, oh, it's a blend. And so a lot of folklore gods and spirits are blended. And I think, I don't know, but I have a theory that, everything was oral, everything was a story.
Yeah.
So some of the stories got confused and blended and forgotten, and so they kind of pieced them together the best they could. So I think a lot of the stories of the gods are blended and together because they probably heard, oh, I heard about this forest god who has hooves and stuff, but then I heard about. So the Christians are saying that if you do witchcraft, that's Satan. So, hey, it's the same person, or this piece and that piece and stuff. And so, when you're learning about Johnathan, when you're learning about tradcraft or whatever, just have an open heart, have an open mind, and enjoy it for the experience that it is.
Yeah. So lastly, before we finish up here, do you have any other projects that are in your pipeline right now?
Yes.
Yay.
And your editor should have it, actually.
I'm like, I know what's happening, but would you like to share?
Here's what I can share. So I got a lot of people saying, we want a sequel. We want a sequel. And I don't like to repeat myself. However, I kept hearing, we want a sequel. So I decided that, you know what? I will do something with the same energy, the same idea, but completely different.
Yay.
So there is a book that's also a story. It's a different kind of story, and it has a lot more spells, like a lot more spells.
Nice.
Every chapter has about 3 or 4, and it's a story, and it takes place in Chicago. I'm just going to say that.
Very cool. And for those of you who don't know, Cross Crow is based in Chicago and happens to be where we all are. So
I'm across the
which
street,
is super exciting.
basically.
Yeah.
Crow. I live about 3 blocks away.
Yep. I'm like a 20-minute walk. So we're all very local here.
Yeah.
Very lastly, where can people find you? You mentioned your podcast before. And I just wanted to open this up to you to let us know where we can find you.
So I am on Facebook, Instagram. What's that new thing? Thread? It's called Thread.
Threads, yeah.
I never go on there. So find me on Instagram. It's just Chris Allaun, Allaun. I'm on Facebook, YouTube. I'm all over the place.
You're all over the place. Awesome.
And you can say that about so many things about me.
It's all over the place. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Just for everybody who is aware, the Black Book of Johnathan Knotbristle is out now and is available from crosscrowbooks.com. You make sure to get your copy for the spooky season, because you know what? I don't think spooky season ends with Halloween. I think spooky season goes all the way into winter. So
yes, agreed. All the way until like February.
Yep, absolutely. So awesome. Chris, thank you so much for joining me. And
thank you. It was fun.
It was super fun. And then I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Halloween. Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.